Well, hello there. Jared and John here with you on another episode of Recliner Wrestling Review. John, how's it going today, man?
Things are pretty good. Ready to talk some wrestling. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm very ready to cover some One Night Stand from 2005. This was this is an awesome pay-per-view. It had a lot of highs and lows, so that's kind of what made it awesome for what we do. So yeah, there's a lot of backstory, a lot of backstage stuff that happens throughout this, and yeah, we're going to get into it. So
Yeah, how'd it come to be? What started this whole ECW craze in 2005 when the company's been dead for what, four years?
yeah, something. Yeah, right at four, right at five, somewhere around there. But yeah, so WWE was putting out DVDs like crazy at that time, and they had recently put out the Rise and Fall of WCW, and sales were all right on that. So much that at least enough, I should say, that they decided that they needed to try an ECW version, and they
I
expected.
well, I'm gonna have to correct you on that. It was the Monday Night Wars that came first. Rise and Fall of WCW was later on.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm scratching that out of my notes then.
But yeah, the Monday Night Wars, that DVD was awesome. Talking about just everything WWE and WCW going head to head. But then they came out with the Rise and Fall of ECW. And I about wore this poor DVD out. I loved it. I thought it was awesome at the time. Uh, it was when I was buying all the WWE DVDs, and this was probably my favorite at the time because I wasn't watching ECW. I mean, I knew who like Raven was because he was in WCW, and I knew who Taz was because he showed up at the Royal Rumble. So I knew
Right.
some of these guys, but this gave me a nice introduction to what was ECW. Like I'd known about it, and I knew all these guys came from there, but I wasn't watching ECW when it aired. So it gave me a chance to
Right.
like get caught up and see why every time something hardcore would happen on a WWE event, the crowd would go crazy and chant ECW.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely far ahead of its time, and garnered such a cult following that even, like you said, 4 or 5 years after its extinction, there was still a massive underground want for it. So, yeah, sales did amazing for the DVD.
So they have this DVD that does super well, and somebody puts that idea in old Vinnie Mac's head and says, "Why don't we do a reunion show?" Yeah, that's right.
So, and there's some controversy about this, and I'm not sure how much you do or don't know about this. So, yes, the idea, even per Bruce Pritchard's recollection, was that it was Rob Van Dam going to Vince, saying, "Hey, we've got this DVD did well, all this kind of stuff," and he pitched the idea we should do an ECW one-off, kind of thing, a pay-per-view. And to give you a little quick synopsis of, I don't want to say how much Vince didn't believe in it, but just how much he didn't put into it per se, was that they had a pay-per-view 2 weeks afterwards.
Yeah,
And this is before they were having pay-per-views every 2 or 3 weeks like they currently do.
and
So it
like
was just not spaced well.
to talk about like Vince not having faith in it, he threw in all those Raw and SmackDown guys like as invaders for the show just because
Correct.
he thought, hey, this thing's never going to do well with just ECW guys. I need to put my guys out there so people buy this thing and tune in.
For sure. And there's a lot of um there's a lot of physical reasons too why Vince isn't into it. So obviously, the Hammerstein Ballroom is where it takes place, and that's kind of one of the ECW home turf kind of things. But it's actually obviously that's where Raw used to emanate from in its inception. But to hear anybody that worked for WWF at that time used to hate the Hammerstein Ballroom because Loden was so crazy. What you see when you see anything wrestling related in the Hammerstein Ballroom is not on the ground level. So they have to go through elevators and stuff, like um, freight elevators, essentially, to take everything, all the ring, every chair, all of that stuff. So it's a logistical nightmare for the crew. So that's a huge reason why Vince, I'm sure, was like dragging his feet, as well as just the uncertainty of how much it would sell and how over it was, how dedicated the fans were and stuff. And there was kind of some back and forth between Rob and Vince, and Rob's final answer was, well, how come they chant ECW when we're in, you know, Saskatchewan or, you know, wherever? Just there was a massive underground following that Vince just didn't really kind of grasp. But the controversy is the fact that Paul Heyman didn't really want anything to do with this either, because he also was nervous about how his brand would be handled. But more so than that, Paul Heyman, on a personal level, isn't so much big on nostalgia. He's more for, you know, what's current, what's next, what's coming up, what can I be ahead of the curve on. And he's not, surprisingly, not one for nostalgia. So part of the controversy is that a lot of the boys thought that it was Paul Heyman putting RVD up to this, because a lot of times the MO for Paul pitching creative would be he would do it so much that it would you know, it would just go in one ear and out the other for Vince, and Vince wouldn't want it. So the boys thought, well, maybe if Paul put this, you know, in Rob's head and used him as a messenger, that maybe it would get over. But that was not the case at all. Paul had nothing to do with the idea or anything. It was totally Rob. As like I said, as per Bruce Pritchard's recollection, even. So
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, the DVD sales did amazingly well, so that only supported Rob's cause. But they didn't necessarily have all the alumni in ECW that you would think that they would have. And there are several reasons for that. Shane Douglas, of course, their first ECW champion, was not there. And that Shane Douglas was kind of the same in with Paul, in that he wasn't really sure how a WWE ECW would be treated. And he just, you know, there was always friction between Shane and WWF anyway. So it was kind of an easy call for him to not want to be involved. So what he did was went ahead and made his own pay-per-view. So that, of course, is Hardcore Homecoming.
And you see, you can see, oh, Shane's right here hanging out.
Yep.
There's also Raven, who wasn't
on
the...
What about me? What about Raven?
So he wasn't on One Night Stand, but also one of your favorites. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Mr. Terry Funk.
Oh, yes. I had to be there for that Hardcore Homecoming.
But Shane puts on a show in a venue that I would argue has more home field advantage than the Hammerstein, but he actually did it in the old ECW arena.
Yes.
2 days beforehand, and he cashed in on I believe it's the Night the Line Was Crossed pay-per-view, where Shane, Terry Funk, and Sabu have a three-way. But at Hardcore Homecoming, they actually did it with barbed wire. So when you watch One Night Stand 2005, Sabu, when he shows up, he's covered in all these scrapes and cuts. He's got bandages on. And that's from 2 days before.
Yeah. And I'm surprised that there wasn't, I don't want to say friction between the boys, because there was a lot of crossover. You know, some, like you said, Sabu was on both shows, but I'm surprised there wasn't any friction for other people. Rob Van Dam specifically, I should say. Hey, why are you trying to cut in on our pay-per-view buys and all this kind of stuff? I'm surprised it didn't happen, and maybe it did, but everything I've read, I haven't found anything to that effect.
I feel like WWE announced first and Shane piggybacked.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. And piggybacking in wrestling isn't nearly as big of a deal as it is per se in like music, that kind of thing.
Well, in Vince's mind, it's a big deal. But for like the boys, hey, that's 2 paydays that week, you know? That's
exactly
solid paydays.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
For sure. Yeah. So we had Hardcore Homecoming, and then of course that Hardcore is what comes of that. Leads
into Jeremy Borash. He comes out with that DVD too, Forever Hardcore, and it's the documentary, but it's like the Rise and Fall of ECW, but they cover a couple topics that, you know, Rise and Fall kind of skipped, like mass transit, like New Jack. Raven gets interviewed pretty heavily in this one, so it's nice to get everybody's point of view. and not like the guys that weren't included in the WWE one. So it's kind of a companion, I would call it, to the rise and fall of ECW. Just another perspective.
Exactly.
Multiple perspectives.
Yep, exactly. So let's see here. I went ahead. I kind of did a little extra homework, which isn't necessarily like me, but so I went ahead and watched the Raw and the SmackDown go home show, if you will, for One Night Stand, and just a few highlights here. So the Raw takes place June 6th of 2005 from someplace called St. Louis, Missouri. John, have you ever heard of that place?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been there once or twice.
Did you go that night by chance?
I did. Now that you're bringing my memories back, I'm remembering things now. I remember being there, and I remember thinking, this is awesome. And but as far as what actually happened, I'm just remembering the emotions of the ECW crew showing up.
For sure. So, of course, this is the first night of the draft lottery. And so they reveal the first pick for Raw, which, of course, was John Cena.
So that's the same night.
Made the big jump from SmackDown as champ. So that was a kind of a big coup or a big get, if you will.
Yeah, there was a time period where St. Louis was getting some dynamite shows, and not so much. Yeah.
No pun intended on the dynamite.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens, I basically just want to touch on anything ECW related. I could care less about everything else. We can cover that in a future episode if we ever get to it. But and some of these pictures that I was able to find aren't necessarily from the same event, but you'll get the idea. So Paul Heyman and the Dudley Boys were backstage, and they get arrested for trespassing, but they're immediately released because Eric Bischoff is
general manager at the time.
He was the general manager, yeah, and he was basically trying to make the One Night Stand thing come off as less than. So he was trying to give them a hard time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Eric Bischoff and Edge and Christian and Tyson Tomko, call out Paul Heyman and then call for backup as they trap Heyman and the Dudley Boys at ringside. There we go. I was like, I don't know why it's not advancing. And as that happens, Paul Heyman says, of course, be careful what you wish for. ECW music plays, and ECW invades. And they clear the ring. And
the banner. I love that. I went home that night and got all my action figures set up just like that. That was cool.
Nice.
That
It was a great moment. And this is like kind of the first time that we're seeing that many alumni together repping the ECW brand since its death, for lack of better terms.
Well, I mean, are we calling it when the company died or when the invasion ECW died?
Yes. Totally fair. So then we go over to SmackDown. And on SmackDown, June 9th is when that took place in Kansas City, Missouri. Kurt Angle loses to Booker T and calls out Taz at commentary. Of course, Taz doesn't, buy into whatever Angle is yelling at his face and stuff. So Angle grabs a chair and just sits next to him and says, "Fine, I'll wait." And Taz just awkwardly keeps staring at him. And so finally, Kurt Angle attacks him and busts his head open with the chair. Taz is helped backstage by officials. JBL versus Benoit is another notable match. And ECW is at ringside. Kurt Angle comes down to ringside and interferes when Benoit gets JBL in the crossface. ECW enters the ring and attacks. Taz re-debuts bandaged and bloody from the previous incident with Kurt Angle, and you have the SmackDown version of ECW reunited, which was kind of funny to me because it was a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
So and that was back whenever they were trying to keep it kind of exclusive. So I always found that kind of interesting.
And I think at that point you were having what they were trying to accomplish was you'd have people who watch Raw and people who watch SmackDown. And I think that's why they had to sell it twice, is what they were going for.
True. And I know DVRs were kind of a thing, but I mean, that kind of stuff was nowhere near. I mean, people were still using VCRs in 2005, as mind blowing as that is. So.
Yes, you were.
Oh, yes. May have even been with an HD TV. But nonetheless, we move on. All right. So now then we are here at ECW One Night Stand. So I want to give kind of a few little numbers here. So it was a sellout at the Hammerstein Ballroom. Of course, it took place in New York City, New York, June 12th of 2005. There was a $484,000 gate, an extra $330,000 pay-per-view buys, which grossed a total of $814,000, which gave it a 0.81 buy rate.
Yeah.
So
what's a sellout at Hammerstein? Like 2,500?
Yes, that is correct. 2,500 people. Yep.
Yeah. So it's, you know, not a huge crowd. Like,
no.
The St. Louis Raw was probably close to 14 or 15 at the time, I would say. So,
right.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, like, those small pay-per-views, like, there's something special about those. And, you know, it's going to be a more rabid crowd right away because it's your diehards desperate to get those tickets, probably paying a little more, too.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of tickets, so there was some ticket controversy as far as sales. Do you know anything about this, John?
Not a clue.
Okay, so back in the day, in the Dizzy, as the boys would say, you could go and get ringside seats at an ECW show, the actual ECW, for like $100. Everything else was like very affordable. And WWE is selling One Night Stand front row tickets for $400. And the idea is kind of going off of Rob Van Dam's sell on this. And again, the numbers for the DVD, like, hey, maybe he's right. Maybe there is, you know, kind of an underground, really strong desire for this. So if we can get it, let's get it. And every other ticket, basically, for a vast majority, I should say, is around a $200 ticket. So people are buying those, and I don't know if there was a dip in sales, if it was just WWE that was kind of nervous about the whole thing. They draw that back to $100. So theoretically, you've got people that have paid $200 that are sitting behind somebody that paid $100 for their seats, and fans ended up finding out about this and had chants at the beginning of the show about it, which is something obviously that WWE doesn't point out.
Yeah.
So another thing that was of interest in my research is that as some of the wrestlers are arriving to the building, I believe it was Dawn Marie and Francine had words backstage. I think Dawn Marie was going to shake her hand or something, and there was words exchanged. Anyway, so this obviously gets to the top, and Vince pulls a meeting together and says, whatever, you know, grudges happened in the past, let's let bygones be bygones, and let's have a successful night, that kind of thing. And you have to keep in mind too, there was a lot of people doing business that hadn't been in business or working as steadily as they had been used to. So yeah, that's going to bring up a lot of old wounds and stuff. So that was just something of note that I thought was interesting. So yeah, I think we're here. We're at the Hammerstein Ballroom and ready to kick things off. So first thing obviously that happens is we get Joey Styles coming to the ring, and what a ovation Joey Styles got. So it starts as an obvious ECW chant, ECW, and he gets in the ring and it changes to a Joey, and he gets very emotional about it, like so much so that even Mick Foley gives him a hard time on commentary throughout the night about it, which I thought, you know, I was like, oh, come on, man, give Joey his moment. It was definitely deserved.
You say moment. This is his debut. This is his first time on WWE TV, and as far as he's concerned, this is a one-time thing. And he makes comments during the show like it is his only night, his only day on the job.
Right.
And he talks about him later, saying, "Oh yeah," he's like, "This was a one-time gig for me." So it was emotional for him. It was really cool to see Joey make his debut at such a high-profile event, and just I thought he crushed it on the show.
Oh yeah, he even acknowledges Vince McMahon on commentary and thanks him for it. Thanks him for the opportunity. And that's something like I've always thought that Joey Styles was a very grounded person, and that he was the voice of that whole brand for its entirety. So he and the fans both have a tight relationship. So for WWE to recognize that when they didn't have to, for sure he was thankful for that. So.
And he did such a good job. They bring him back at is it Survivor Series or?
He did do something else with them. Yeah, I can't remember what that was.
This show's in June, but they don't bring him back to like November-ish, and they give him a job because I think Coach was booked in a match against Batista or something, and they were like, "Oh, Joey, go on out. We come on back for another deal," and leads to him growing more and more, and he ended up having a long time career with the company. So
yeah,
but this was the day that started it.
Yeah, which is crazy to think that it all started as a one-off kind of thing. So we get into the first match here. Actually, before we do so, Joey Styles is not the only person that did commentary, even though in ECW that was the way it was. Of course, WWE putting their hand in the cookie jar, make sure that Mick Foley is in there on commentary as well, which isn't a bad choice per se. I mean,
it made sense.
First of all, perfect. They bring him as Cactus Jack. And second of all, of course, he had a great run in ECW prior to getting to WWE. So
so he had a reason to be there, and then he gets involved as the show goes on. So it makes sense. It was very well done, for sure.
Yep. Without question. So we get into our first match, and boy, are you ready for this?
Well, before that, it's Joey comes out, Mick comes out. They do this real hard cut, and like you and I both talked about, it's kind of awkward, but then it goes to that old ECW graphics. And I thought that was really cool. Like, that's a nice touch. This really is just a one-night thing. It's just a reunion show, and they want to celebrate it by having those old graphics show up.
Right, yeah.
And they do that. They have the old extreme music going, and then we get to our first match, which
and that dip in nostalgia was really nice for people who had watched ECW. And I know there was a lot of even in listening to like Bruce Pritchard's podcast on this pay-per-view, in WWE's eyes, this was a showcase to the masses of ECW, because in their eyes there was like such a sliver of the population that knew of ECW, even though that all their shows, anytime anything happens, it's a, ECW chant or, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's them thinking they're putting a showcase on something, and they, to be fair, they are. But man, that ECW crowd was a rabid, loyal fan base. So, they, there was a lot of things that WWE did on this night that probably could have done without. Mick Foley being on commentary was great. Didn't have to happen. All the WWE superstars that are going to be there didn't have to happen, but is what it is.
Talk about the crowd and it being so rabid, and we were talking about ticket sales. They also comped a ton of. Well, I don't know that they comped them. I just assume, but there's tons of ECW alumni in the crowd throughout the show.
Yes.
So that was kind of cool to see. Also, just hey, look, there's Chris Chetty,
right,
and a bunch of others. So
yeah,
it's good stuff
for sure. Okay, so our first match, boom,
Lionheart.
Lionheart, Chris Jericho. What a cool throwback. And what was interesting was that he kind of put his current angle on what we now know as the main roster per se on hold to be able to do just this one-off Lionheart nostalgia kind of thing, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
So, but the only thing that was weird was that he used current Chris Jericho music.
Yeah,
but
happens.
it does, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, there's always licensing issues and things, and
But
yeah,
Foley talked about it, how he was the one showing Paulie the tape that like of Jericho in either Japan or Mexico, and really got Paul's interested in Jericho, so that he could bring him into ECW after he strung him along for like a year or something.
right.
And so Jericho, he did like ECW before he went to WCW, and his opponent this night in what is supposed to be his final match at the time in 2005, but Lance Storm. Jericho and Lance trained together. They had their first match against each other, so Lance is always a super smart guy. He wants to, bookend his career. He's like, oh, it'll be cool to have my first match and my last match against the same guy.
The Thrill
Lance,
Seekers, baby.
yeah, they eventually tagged together too. So there's lots of history. They're real good friends. Yeah. Obviously, Lance doesn't stay retired.
Right.
He ends up going to Ring of Honor to do like some one-off matches against like Bryan Danielson, Mike Bennett, Chris Hero. He did some random indie in Canada where he got to wrestle Bobby Roode, Christopher Daniels. But yeah, Lance doesn't stay retired. But yeah, my notes on this was Lance retired pretty early. Well, that goes into semi-retirement pretty early in his career. He's like that picture you have up there. Like he's still jumping. He's moving really good. He's still super athletic.
Big time.
Still had all his hair. But yeah, he leaves to start the Storm Wrestling Academy, which produced a ton of people, and go into that semi-retirement and work like a super light schedule. Eventually becomes a trainer in OVW, and then I guess down in NXT as well. So, I mean, Lance had a heck of a career, but at the time in 2005, this is where he was hanging up the boots momentarily. So
yeah,
him and Jericho, they had a nice little match. It wasn't the greatest thing ever, but I really enjoyed it just because of the story they were telling.
I thought it was actually a pretty decent match myself. Yeah,
I liked it. It was a good opener. Got that Jericho pop right away, and Lance is awesome, and everyone. I think everyone in the wrestling community respects him and knows how great he is. But yeah, that's some of my thoughts, and the finish.
Well, before we go to the finish, so a couple things that I've got written down. I tried to kind of write down anything that stood out. So Jericho did a really good second rope drop kick, but Lance returned it. He did a Irish whip, or I'm sorry, Chris does an Irish whip. It's reversed by Lance and then done into a drop kick, which was superb. It really, I mean, he really nailed that. Let's see here. Chris rolls up Lance for a pin. Lance kicks out, sending Jericho towards the ropes. And Just Incredible makes an appearance and nails Jericho in the head with a kendo stick, like really hard. The other spot in here that really jumped out to me, and I found a couple GIFs. I'm going to start seeing if I can include some of those in the show and see how that fares for us. But there's this really cool spot that happens in the corner. You were talking about Lance still being agile and athletic, and this really showed it off, I thought.
Yeah, dude's got ups. He can go.
Big time. And then
Bam.
Drop kick to the back. Great stuff, man. Really great stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned the finish. Just Incredible, Dawn Marie, and Jason all come out and whack Jericho with the, as Joey was calling it, the Singapore cane. And yeah, that was the finish. Jericho gets hit. Lance pins him.
And it is a heck of a shot too, man.
Bam. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
messing around. And then you mentioned the Thrill Seekers, but that is the Impact Players reuniting again. So that's a nice little bookend on Lance as well. Like he gets to leave with that tag team that was so successful for him in ECW.
Right. It's like a double bookend. It was really nice. It was a nice touch. So yeah, I thought I'm with you. I thought it was a great opener. So yeah, just a good dose of nostalgia to kick things off. So then next up we've got there you go.
Yeah, Gary the Pitbull.
Gary Moore, is that right?
Uh,
Feel like that's right.
Pitbull.
Gary the Pitbull. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does kind of a he leads off, I should say, an ECW Remembers segment, paying homage to the people of ECW that had passed away. And one of those that was a standout to me, obviously, was Chris Candido, who had just passed away just a matter of months before this event. And there are Chris Candido chants throughout the night, even. So
yeah, I think they had Candido chants and little F John Cena throughout that Jericho Lance Storm match. So I mean, it was already going, and then through that tribute.
By the way, which is crazy because when I watched the Raw from 6 days before, and John makes the jump from SmackDown to Raw, it is a massive babyface pop. Like people are cheering like crazy. There was not like the 50-50 cheer and boo that we know currently. And then 6 days later, people are FU Cena, and 1 year later, that's complete madness.
Yeah. And in between, like after that match and that Gary the Pitbull, they show those empty seats and they start teasing about the SmackDown invaders already because that was the story they were telling. So just showing those empty seats and then doing that tribute. So it's
they referred to them as the SmackDown Crusaders, which I thought was an awful name. I don't understand that at all. But yeah.
Well, they were crusading. They were on a mission to kill ECW.
True.
I didn't write it. I mean,
same, yeah. Same. Okay, but so
trying to justify that last minute stuff.
Yeah,
but it worked.
Okay, so anyway. Up next we've got our next match, which is the Unholy Alliance, Tajiri, Mikey Whipwreck, and the Sinister Minister, James Mitchell.
Oh yeah.
Come down to the ring.
Yeah, Tajiri, Little Guido, aka Nunzio in the FBI.
Correct.
So we've got
James E. Smith, Tracy Smothers, Tony Mamaluke. Am I missing somebody? I feel like I might be missing somebody.
JT Smothers, Mamaluke. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got
On His Own.
Super crazy. Yeah, and what was really interesting about that, speaking of On Your Own, was that we had these two factions come to the ring, and I'm like, oh, cool, we've got our cluster match. And then it was just a triple threat elimination match, and I was like, okay. I mean, it's cool everybody got a payday, but wow, that was a lot for a little.
I thought it was fun. I liked it a lot. But I like Guido quite a bit. So I
know you're such a mark for him, man. I don't get it.
Best.
Yeah, Anthony watched this with me, and he obviously had no idea. And I'm like, just check this guy out. He's like 5'6" and like a size 13 or 14 boot. It's crazy. He's an anomaly.
He was a real shooter, and he could go. And yeah, like my favorite memory about him, like when he was Nunzio, was outside the Royal Rumble, just hanging out, hiding. Like, I'm not getting in. And like, he was,
and now it won't die.
No, he's great. Yeah. But yeah, so since it's ECW, it's not just a 3-way elimination. It is the 3-way dance. So
correct. Yes.
It is not a single fall, like you said. It is elimination, and they had all those other guys out there for the shenanigans.
Of course, yeah. They're getting utilized more than just an entrance for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, you got some shenanigans going on. Super crazy, like pretty early on in the match.
Dude, for me, this was like match of the night. This was like definitely one of the top 2 matches for me.
It was good.
Okay, that's fair.
But this was a pretty stacked card. That's why we're talking about it.
For sure. For sure.
But yeah, early on, like in that rise and fall of ECW, they were talking about all these dives that people would take. So early on in the match, Super Crazy heads to the crowd, gets up on the balcony, and does a beautiful moonsault off the top of it, and lands it, and then he's back in the ring seconds later. You're looking for that Sicilian slice.
Yep, there's that.
Yep.
And then
there he is, climbing up, and just
beautiful moonsault too.
Yeah, and I think
that's also a big reason why there were so many faction people.
Yeah. But I also think that's one of the things that got Super Crazy hired after this show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big time.
WWE saw that and they're like, yeah, we can give this guy a job for sure.
Yeah. Yes. So, Super Crazy does a moonsault off the first balcony. Tajiri pins and eliminates little Guido. Super Crazy then does a moonsault off the top rope. Actually, if I remember this right, he does one off the first rope, second rope, goes for the third, something happens, and then he gets the moonsault off the third, or off the top rope, excuse me, and gets a 3 count over Tajiri. So, go
ahead.
For people like myself, whenever I see a triple threat match, and after Guido got pinned, and I expected the match to be done, and it kept going, I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this. So it was cool because I was kind of an ECW fan, but I sure didn't get to like watch a lot of it. So I wasn't quite as familiar with all the ECW isms.
Yeah. So watching for me, like I'm a Guido fan, but the way he gets pinned, I thought was pretty nice to have Mikey Whipwreck get involved and do that whippersnapper, and then have was it Tajiri take the pin there? Tajiri pin Guido? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Tajiri gets in there, and then Crazy pins Tajiri to get the win. So it was a fun match for sure.
Speaking of Mikey Whipwreck, excuse me. One of the other things that stood out to me in my research, obviously, so Stone Cold Steve Austin is here on this night, and makes kind of a big entrance in the end of the pay-per-view, but during the day in the while they're kind of the boys are backstage working at matches and this kind of stuff, Mikey Whipwreck approaches Steve, because obviously Steve's the biggest guy in the business, and says, hey, do I have your permission to do the
whippersnapper
names, and Steve, of course, and one of the takeaways from my research is everybody kept going on and on about how nice and how giving Steve was this night. But Steve says, of course, I stole it from you. So little side note here for you. Another kind of useless information thing I found in my research was the only actual match that Steve has in ECW is against Mikey Whipwreck. So that was just kind of cool that he kind of gave back to Mikey that way and said, yeah, it's I made it big, but it's your move. So plus he does it from the second rope, so it's kind of different. But and he hit it well. So I thought it was a great match. And
James Mitchell, man, just I love that guy.
Right? That is commitment to be. I mean, doing that to your eyebrows like all the time, like when you go to the gas station and everything, they're all done up.
James Mitchell. What did I just call Mr. Sinister Minister?
Sinister Minister, James Mitchell. Yeah.
So,
like literally the most carny manager in wrestling history, modern day.
There's an X-Men villain, Mr. Sinister, and I always call him Sinister Minister, and it's interchangeable at this much. James Mitchell, what a character.
For sure.
And he is, I don't know. I don't know what his monikers are, but like he is supposed to be like the devil god of karaoke, and he's awesome.
He's like every other company's Paul Bearer.
Awesome. Yeah. But it's great to see that guy, and I really do think this is one of those matches. They're like, Super Crazy. Let's get you a contract. That dive, that was cool. We're gonna sell.
For sure, he was putting in some work, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Next up, we've got another ECW package highlighting the early days of ECW. And that one was really cool. Showcasing And there's where we got to see like Sabu and Terry Funk and all this kind of stuff. A lot of nostalgia for the people that actually grew up watching ECW. So that was very cool.
They showed some Shane Douglas there too, even though they were at odds.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Good on WWE for taking the high road on that. So then up next we've got boy, this was an interesting one. So I felt like the last match, the pacing and only the pacing. I know there's only one luchador or whatever you want to call him, but it just felt weird to me as a viewer that they had two matches back to back that have the same kind of feel. And so
I get what they were going for. That like it's like that's your fun shenanigans, high spot match, and now you've got your lucha match. So on like, oh, it's going to be different, but it's a little the same. And I agree, the pacing was pretty similar. But these guys, from what I remember, they stayed in the ring for the most part.
No, not so much. I mean, more. They stayed in the ring more than the previous match.
Yeah.
I mean, they sure didn't climb up on the balcony.
No.
So the weird thing about this is Psychosis comes to the ring with a mask, and before he even gets in the ring, he takes it off.
Yep.
And throughout the match, people are saying, "Put your mask on."
Yeah.
It was just I'm like everybody else. Why did you take that off? I don't get it. We've been trained. What's that?
Joey covered it on commentary.
Well, he tried. He tried, but the crowd still chant, and of course the crowd can't hear commentary. But yeah, Joey did a great job saying, well, something about his pretty face, or wouldn't you want to see his pretty face, or something like that.
No, he said he took the mask off. It's a sign of respect to the people, to the crowd of ECW.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Yeah.
Or I just made up my own commentary in my head. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean that's what they were going for. Was like, I respect the ECW crowd. But yeah, that was my first time seeing Psychosis since WCW. So I was like, oh, right. Cool, this is awesome.
Yeah. Let's see here. So Ray does a move over the top rope to the outside over the guardrail. I think I've got a couple pictures here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Psychosis hits a leg drop with Ray over the guardrail from the top rope. It was crazy.
The Psycho driver, or no, Psycho leg drop? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure. I really don't, to be honest, I don't have a whole lot of notes written down for this. I was watching it thoroughly, but when I looked down after the match and looked at my paper, I'm like, well, I didn't really write much.
It was quick. Yeah.
It was pretty quick. It was pretty fast paced. Like I said, the two standouts as far as crowd noise was the "Put Your Mask On" chant, and then Ray hits a 619, and the crowd kind of craps on that. I guess just because it was a very WWE kind of move. And then he hits a West Coast pop, and Ray pins Psychosis for a 3 count.
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
So then, of course, after that, like you alluded to earlier, we've got a whole balcony full of empty seats, and here come the SmackDown Crusaders.
One more thing about that was a couple days later, Psychosis and Ray both kind of talked about how they were disappointed with the match, but it leads to the Mexicools later on, and Psychosis. Super crazy, and then they bring in Hoovy, so they've got the 3 of them as the Mexicools later on. But hey, this is his first match in WWE. And
again,
cool.
like I said earlier, some of these people have not been working consistently. Like Rey Mysterio, obviously, has been in SmackDown and stuff, and you know the wheels are still greased up and stuff. Whereas Psychosis probably had some rust on him. I'm sure he wasn't sitting at home for 4 years, but I'm sure he wasn't, wrestling weekly either.
Or WWE style.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. So, we get just the entrance of the SmackDown Crusaders, and then we cut to some ECW highlights, kind of the flashbacks part 2, if you will.
Yeah, this was Kurt, Carlito, JBL, and his whole cabinet showing up, and then more highlights. So
Yes. Also, of note, the Basham brothers as well.
yeah,
And this is
they were part of the cabinet. OJ too.
yeah, that's fair. If I can get the right thing, there we go. Here I am. The Basham brothers actually, if you recall our first episode, I met John Cena at Hooters, and his travel partners were the Basham brothers. So that's really like the standout, only really thing besides them wearing like pleather vinyl pants or whatever. That's really all I remember. It's like modern day DOA. So yeah. Let's see here. Oh, we'll go over to page 2 of the old notes.
And then
And
Joel.
yeah, we get your old buddy Joel Gertner. Makes his prideful appearance. Of course, he goes over to the SmackDown Crusaders and gets pushed to the ground by JBL and kicked away. And then Kurt Angle cuts a promo against the ECW crowd. JBL takes the mic and does the same kind of thing. And then all of a sudden we get music that hits from Rob Van Dam. And he and old Bill Alfonso, that whistle.
Fonzie. why you gotta pick on Fonzie?
Well, I should probably not say. So RVD does the opposite and cuts a babyface promo to the crowd and shoots on WWE creative and writers, which I thought was fantastic. And I'll let you kind of take over that. Exactly. Yeah, we talked about it for a second before we hit record, but yeah, WWE kind of booked him.
I mean, the reaction the heels were getting was amazing. They were getting booed out of the building, and then RVD comes out and woo! You want to talk about a guy being over? That was awesome. And for me, this is the career-defining promo for RVD.
Hands down, not only career-defining, probably the best promo of his career.
Yeah.
He was not known for being a good talker, but this one was so real for him. First of all, like the whole concept being his kind of brainchild that he presented, and I'm sure got more chefs in the kitchen kind of stuff. So it's not like all Rob Van Dam's pay-per-view, but it wouldn't have happened had it not been for Rob. But that mixed with the elephant in the room, Rob had a knee injury that he had just had fixed, and so he wasn't able to compete. And I mean that just tore his heart out. He even says in the promo like he hates that more than not being able to wrestle at Mania. That's how big of a deal it was. And so it's really easy for him to fire up and for the crowd to get behind him being fired up because he's just so emotional about it,
His emotion was at a 10. And he was just, like I said, career defining. That when I think of RVD, I think of that night. I think of that promo. He just killed it. And, fast forward a year, I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen, but RVD's never won a world title up until this point.
Yeah, and this is kind of where Vince, you were talking about like Psychosis and Super Crazy getting signed off of this. This is also kind of an eye-opening experience for Vince towards Rob, where he kind of looks at him in a different light. Like, maybe I'm kind of selling this guy short. And like you said, fast forward a year later and things look a lot different for Rob's career.
Because like 2001, Van Dam was the hottest guy in the company.
Big time.
In the fall of 2001.
Yes.
And he's
Mr. Monday Night.
He's doing main events with Austin and Angle in a triple threat on pay-per-view. But then never wins the title. And then fast forward to 2005, they tried jobbing him out again and again and again, but he's RVD. And he's still over despite creative crushing him and not letting him talk and, being booked horribly. But he's still over with the audience. And that says something to him. So for me, this promo's that moment where it's, all right, we're going to have to put the title on this guy at some point. And you fast forward a year to One Night Stand 06, and that's exactly what they did.
Yep.
But this night, it's all about that promo. It's all about that emotion, letting everybody know that, hey, ECW meant a lot to him, and he's more than just the guy that says dude or whatever.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
So
And he doesn't have to be a great promo to be over. Not everybody has to be a great talker.
He's got
Will it
Fonzie
get you
there
to
do that for him.
Stone Cold and the Rock level? No, but not everybody has to be that.
Yeah. He also puts over Fonzie, saying like, "If it was up to me, you would have been here with me," and I thought that was really
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
And he cuts this great promo, and it ends with Rhino just slamming into him.
I am a bit of a Rhino mark, so I was all for it, even though Rob's the babyface at this point. And he, like you said, career defining promo. He's really like in the moment, and then Rhino comes in and wrecks the moment. And like attacks his knee, takes his knee brace off, and Rob kind of helped out on that, obviously. So that was kind of distracting to look back on. But yeah, no. So obviously after this big promo, and the knowledge of his injury and surgery and stuff, like as I was rewatching this, even I'm like, oh God, don't mess his knee up. You know, like I feel like it's still so fragile at that point. But
in the crowd, they're not worried about his knee. They're already chanting for the guy to come make the save. The lights go out, and the crowd is still just chanting Sabu, Sabu, Sabu. Out he comes. He's in the ring. Points up. Him and Rhino had a really killer match, and one of the things the crowd was chanting was "You got fired at Rhino." So, like looking at that picture, I can already see like that dude's in great shape.
Dude,
he worked his butt off. Yeah.
Anthony made comments about Rhino's physique, like how really in shape and just totally ripped he was at this point. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, he was literally a man beast.
Yeah. So they have a killer match. Van Dam hits the Van Daminator with the chair on Rhino, and Sabu and Rhino tore it apart. And like I said, when you look back at that match, Sabu's got all these bandages on it.
Right? Yeah.
All that three-way 2 nights before, like in the barbed wire match.
Which is funny to me that it didn't dawn on me whenever I was watching that back. Yeah, he had one on his face somewhere. I can't remember where, but I just took it totally in stride as, that's Sabu. He's always just messed up. But yeah, it was obviously from Hardcore Homecoming 2 nights prior. So, but yeah, so and then Sabu hits the
Arabian.
Yeah, the Arabian Skull Crusher. There we go. On Rhino on the table, and good stuff, man. Good stuff. Actually, I might. Nope, just the aftermath. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we head backstage and we get a little head with Al Snow.
Yeah.
And we go to our third round of ECW highlights.
Yeah, again and again and again.
And I mean, to a certain point, I was like, okay, are we dipping in the well too much? But at the same time, the clips and stuff that they selected, I thought really showed, again, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, to the masses what had been missed in ECW, and to the ECW fans, it was just a major dip of nostalgia to be able to see some of that footage and stuff again. Because keep in mind, this is prior to the WWE Network, so it's not like you can just recall it at any time. If you don't own these on DVD, like some people I know, then these are just memories for you. So it was cool to see that. Let's see here. What we got next? We've got
Raw shows up next.
The Raw Crusaders enter with Mr. Eric Bischoff, and take their seats. So
I loved Coach during this. Coach is just wearing an ECW hockey jersey where they spray painted like
the no sign,
like a line through it. Yeah, it's like, really, Coach? That's
right.
Whatever.
Yeah,
like it made me laugh
for sure.
But yeah, it's Edge, Christian, Tomko, Rob Conway, which I loved. William Regal. Did I miss anybody? Maven was
Maven.
There
Maven. Yep. And Maven will come into play later in the pay-per-view, surprisingly.
Yeah, solid group of Raw guys, I thought.
Yeah.
And Edge was a pretty hot heel at the moment in that time, and we'll touch on that in a minute or two.
Yep. So let's see here. After they show the Raw Crusaders, then we get Chris Benoit
Yep.
versus Eddie Guerrero.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is supposed to be like, this has got all the hype because while they've had matches in WWE, this phenomenal match that happened in WCW did not ever happen in ECW. So this is supposed to be like them just kind of doing a layup on this is going to be a great match. I will hand it over to you and get your thoughts first before I say anything.
It's always weird watching Benoit now. I don't know. It's just it's a great match, and it's just it's left a sour taste in my mouth.
That's totally fair. Maybe that's something that we need to kind of touch on while we're here for a second, because I know it's going to come up again in the future.
I mean that could be a whole episode.
For sure.
But Eddie was working heel at the time, and I really enjoyed that. And then, Eddie, this is June of 2005. Right. Eddie passes away fall of this year.
Yep, 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. So I was curious. I don't know if you know, was this the last time they wrestled? I'm not sure.
It might have been, but I'm not 100% sure either.
Yeah, I'm not positive.
I'll be honest, I hope not.
Yeah, and I think it was leading to something else. I need to go back and watch more of that year, I guess. But it felt like the feud was picking up and going somewhere else later.
Maybe I think Eddie was feuding with Batista, if I'm not mistaken, on Raw. But I could be wrong, or SmackDown, I should say. Excuse me.
Yeah. And thoughts on the match? I mean, those two guys were both workhorses and put it all out there. And as far as like on this show, it's like, oh, you had your dive match, you had your lucha match, you had that hot opener where you got the Jericho babyface pop. You've had just incredible surprises. You've got the heels. You had the Sabu stuff. So after that Sabu Rhino, it's, let's have just a great technical match. And that's one of those things that Rise and Fall of ECW talked about was, ECW wasn't just the hardcore stuff. They had great matches also. So
I don't think ECW would have been as big or as successful as it was even had it not been for they had other stuff to offer besides just hardcore.
Yeah, you have to have a variety. I mean, it's like a buffet. You got to take a little bit of everything.
Right. For sure. My overall thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of this match. And neither were they. So let's see here. Yeah, I was so much not a fan. I literally have one line written, and that's the finish. Let's see what I've got over here.
Finish. Yeah.
So there's I want to go back to that before we get into this. And like you said, this could be a whole episode, so I won't stay on this too long. I understand that it's hard for people to watch a Chris Benoit match. For whatever reason, I am able to turn that side off and still recognize him as a wrestler and what he was able to accomplish as a wrestler. So for me, it's a lot easier to separate the two. I know that's not always the case for everybody, so I get that it makes it hard to watch. That's just me. So yeah, we've got Benoit and Jericho, and the crowd is, as you can see there in that picture, is really interacting now that we've got both Raw and SmackDown, and the crowd is doing all kinds of different chants. I believe this is one of the points in the pay-per-view where we get a Chris Candido chant, and it's just, they're chanting everything except for this match, and so then
chants about Lita.
Yeah. So basically they're getting frustrated, especially Eddie is getting very upset about the lack of fan participation in the match. And so Benoit tries to kind of fire him up, and they do a chop fest back and forth. And then from there they go into a rest hold, and the crowd, checks out again and goes back to, giving a hard time to the Crusaders from WWE.
And I thought they kind of won the crowd back. I felt like they were early on in the match. The crowd
Eventually they did, but still it was not. I mean, it's kind of like if you've ever played golf. Once you're in your head, you're in your head.
And Eddie does get busted too.
Yeah, I believe it's a broken nose, as a matter of fact. So he's bleeding from the nose and stuff. And so the finish of the match comes from Eddie tapping out to the crippler crossface, which it didn't have the proper build up to me as far as a finish. It just felt like I don't even want to say that they went home too soon. It was just it didn't have the proper build.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, with the way Eddie was presenting his character at the time, if it was leading to like another match later.
It very well could have been.
I don't remember.
It could have been. But I know that, like I said, I know that neither one of them gave a great performance, but Eddie especially was upset about this. And the thing that really stood out to me is here's a picture of Eddie right after the match, and you can visibly see Eddie say to Chris, "I owe you one." And so, I mean, it's very obvious to everybody that whether it's just his head not in the game or what, and like like we spoke about previously, like we're only 4 to 5 months away from losing Eddie. So I don't know what's going on in Eddie's head or in Eddie's world right now, but
that very well, in my mind, I think that's the character he's playing and trying to lead to something more. But I don't know.
That's a very refreshing perspective there, Mr. John. So that's what I've got for that. Let me flip my notes over here. Yes.
We go back to the Crusaders.
We do, and we go back to Mr. Joel Gertner.
Now this promo.
This was great, man. I loved this. Joel Gertner returns and interviews Bischoff. Joel asked to be gainfully employed and will do anything. Commentary, get coffee, anything. Bischoff spit takes his beer and says, "Hell no, I will not hire you." And calls him a scab, a wannabe, and a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Dude, that's great stuff.
Poor Joel.
Oh, poor Joel, man. Can't even get a job. All right, so then we've got entrances for our next match, which include Mike Awesome against...
No mullet.
No mullet, yes, no power mullet. That's even discussed on commentary. Masato Tanaka is his opponent. And to me, in my opinion anyway, this was the match of the night.
Oh, yeah. Those two, they went out and just beat each other up. They went nuts. They were doing all
within a short amount of time. Like they're doing spots that I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, there was no time to rest between and let it all sink in. They were going 90 miles an hour. And
Vince was upset about that, by the way.
I'm sure he was.
Vince thought it was way too much. Yeah.
And they, let it all out there and really hit, a bunch of unprotected headshots with the chair.
Dude.
Awesome bomb to the outside through the table, and then the dive over the top. There were a couple of power bombs during the match that were nuts too. So
yeah. Yep. So what I've got written is, and I've actually got quite a few notes for this match.
Oh, it was nuts.
Yeah, well, it really was. Let's see here. Awesome bomb to Tanaka from the ring apron through a table over the guardrail. So that was the first one where the table is against the guardrail, like diagonal, and he gives him a power bomb like steep, like he lands like right on the top of his shoulders, and it looks nasty. And then let's see here where we got. Awesome splash from the top rope. Tanaka kicks out at 2. 3 insane chair shots, and I have all that written in capital letters. 3 insane chair shots from Mike Awesome to Tanaka, who no sells it. There's I'm like,
wild.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. Let's see here. Blockbuster to Awesome on top rope. tornado DDT from top. Awesome kicks
Yeah,
out at 2.
that DDT, I've never seen anything like that before or since.
Yeah,
That DDT, yeah, that was crazy.
it was crazy for sure. And then it's reversed tornado DDT from Awesome, or to Awesome by Tanaka. Awesome
That's the
bomb.
one I'm talking about. That tornado. Woo!
Right. Yeah. And as pictured here, we can see Awesome bomb from the top rope through an already broken table to Tanaka. Tanaka kicks out at 2. And then, holy cow, the spot of the match. Awesome with a what I know is a razor's edge over the top rope through the table to the outside to Tanaka, followed by a dive to the outside.
Yeah,
Which I noticed that if you look closely right there, Awesome catches his knee on the top rope.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's that or what, but apparently he's got a huge gouge on his knee I'm assuming under his pad or on the side of his pad or something. And he requires stitches or staples or something like that. And I completely missed that. I only learned that through my online research.
Yeah, when he's walking to the back, you can see him kind of pull on his knee pad.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Followed to by a dive to the outside. Awesome pins Tanaka for 3 counts. And then after he wins, and this I thought was just like, what's the point? He awesome bombs the ref. I'm like,
that was a dangerous one, the one he did on the ref.
Oh, it looked
that one
awful.
made me nervous. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That ref, I mean, he barely got him flipped over to be able to get on his back.
Yeah, that could have gone really bad.
Yeah, and it was totally for no point. I mean, there was nothing to it. It wasn't like he was totally healing it up in the match. They were just having a pretty straightforward match. So I was like, why are you trying to get heat after the match? I just didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And then we get another entrance.
There's other stuff you got to talk about here. Joey shoots on Mike Awesome during the match.
Oh, that's right. I forgot all about this. Go ahead and take this one.
So Joey is really upset with Mike Awesome. There's back history there where Mike Awesome left ECW. He was in breach of contract, I believe, and went to WCW and took a giant payday. So Joey Styles was still like, it's 5 years later, still super hot about it, and shoots on him during the match, and talks horrible about him.
See, and I didn't realize all this, and I thought all that was a work. I thought that was him trying to get over the heel.
No, Joey hated him. That was pure shoot, and that was Joey only had a one-night deal, so let him have it.
Huh. Wow.
And he makes a comment about like Mike Awesome killing himself, and then sadly, I think it's 20 months, like a year and a half, almost 2 years later, Mike Awesome ends up doing it. So it's a sad story on Mike Awesome. He just, but this night, great match, probably match of the night, one of the top 2 for sure.
Oh yeah, no, this match. And here's the thing too. So for me, going back and watching some, and I hate to call 2005 old wrestling, but stuff even like from the 80s and 90s can be kind of hard for me because it's just so much slower paced as compared to what we're currently used to. And that's just the way it is. If we were in 1995, it wouldn't be so hard to watch wrestling from 1980, but to go back and watch from 1960 would be hard. It's just the progression. But if you're a fan of current wrestling, this is a great match to watch because it has the pacing of a current match of what you would see like on a Dynamite or something like that.
And I would... I don't know. I feel... I wouldn't compare it to a Dynamite match, but it is definitely... to me, it felt like a video game of... Smash, 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 crash, boom.
True, fair. Okay, maybe not a Dynamite, but a pay-per-view.
Maybe. But yeah, definitely a hardcore style for sure, and really turned up.
Yeah. And just the strikes and everything. Go back and watch those 3 chair shots. Holy cow. Unprotected, ate them. Just ate them.
Never would happen now.
Oh, God. No.
But yeah, after that match, as they're clearing the place out and everything. The ECW or the Crusaders, they were really hamming it up there, and like throughout the match too, just like making fun of them. Like after there'd be a big spot, they'd kick out, whatever. It's at this point in the show, Paulie's music hits, and that is another this might be my favorite Paul Heyman promo.
Dude, it is a 10 for sure.
Yeah, and like Paul can talk, but you were talking about how he wasn't invested in this. He fooled me.
Really? So for me, if you watch this back,
100% into this and loved everything.
Really, I feel a little bit different. I feel like if this is a span of the promo, it started out not so much, but ended up like we're here, that kind of thing. But it started out like I don't know, just kind of a thank you and that kind of thing, just like going through the motions to a slight degree. It wasn't until the next year in 06 that it was like, okay, he's at a 10 from the get go.
And see this, I was into it. I felt like he had the pacing down where it's like, okay, I'm going to build this up. I want to thank the audience for this one night. And
then address the elephants in the room.
And then he looks up, and so at the time, this was the whole Matt Hardy putting Edge and Lita on blast online. Matt gets fired, and he's like, wait a minute, I lost my girl and my job? And right. Edge is number one. Well, he's on his way. He is a mega heel at this point.
Oh, he is a massive heel, yeah.
And yeah, Paulie shoots on him. He's like, Matt freaking Hardy. And
wait, well, no. You got to do this right. He's like, I've got 2 words for you, Matt freaking Hardy. And Edge's sell of this is like, it's the greatest thing ever. He's like, that's 3. That's 3 words, right? That's 3. That's 3.
You did it wrong.
How so?
He was doing the V1. That's what he was doing. Yeah, gotcha. So he's doing the Matt Hardy thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So he's like 1, 2.
Minor
3.
detail that I missed, but that's that even elevates it all the more.
Yeah. But back then, like I love that. And then Paulie turns to JBL. He's like,
actually, he turns to Bischoff first, I believe.
Oh, Bischoff. Okay. Talks about Bischoff. Yeah, there he is. we're not at the WCW show.
Right.
You're in my house.
Great on Bischoff too, because he had his back turned. As Paul was yakking on the mic, and he just turns around and gives this coy look on his face and just flips him off, and it was great. It was everybody wanted to see, the ECW WCW rivalry, 2 top guys right there, having words.
And then to JBL. And the line was, the only reason you were champion for a year is because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesday.
To which JBL gives the sell of the night.
Yeah.
Did you hear that one, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you. Which, of course, for you kids is a Sanford and Son reference. But, dude, it was great. It was over the top. It was very freaking true.
And that JBL character is a heel. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. He was a great heel.
He really, really was. And for so many reasons, in my opinion, is the star of this entire pay-per-view. Both good and bad. But yeah, no, he was he was too easy to hate, in fact. And I think that's a big reason why he doesn't get the credit, is people just write him off like, oh, I hated that guy. But no, he was very good. Keep in mind how tenured he is with the company at this point, and how he's navigated and kind of climbed his way up the ladder, sort of say. So, yeah. And by the way, if you didn't know this, the JBL character was all Bruce Pritchard. That was like his baby. So, they, once Vince saw a little bit of success with it, they strapped a rocket to it, gave him the title, and the rest was history. So
for sure, needed somebody to work Eddie and Batista, so there we go.
There you go.
Yep. Taker too.
So now we are at the main event, and we cut to the
Oh, the
Dudley.
tie-dye.
Right? Yeah. The Dudley boys make their entrance, and then Tommy Dreamer comes down. Actually, yeah, no, that's correct.
Tommy comes out, and we haven't talked about this. Tommy wrote the whole show.
There you go.
Did
Because
you know
Tommy
that?
was actually on WWE Creative at this point, so
But this was
main
his
roster.
baby. Yeah, he wrote that whole pay-per-view, and put it together. And I yeah, this is a great show. That's why we're talking about it. And Tommy's awesome, and he knew the reaction it was going to get. But as soon as Metallica started, Tommy's outside the ring, and you could just tell how happy he is, and you could see the crowd just looking and like erupting as they hear "Enter Sandman" start to play.
Oh yeah, like Tommy, there's no hiding his emotion. Like he is grinning from ear to ear almost the entire night.
Yeah.
So
and for me, part of this night, the whole night, is Sandman's entrance.
I mean, dude, yeah. So
Sandman.
I was, you know, we've talked about this in past episodes. I was a WWE, WWF loyalist, so I watched dashes of ECW here and there. I didn't get the whole Sandman thing, but yes, that is exactly what people paid for. This was their, and the parallel is ironic in so many ways. But this is ECW Stone Cold. This is what they came to see. Yeah. Was this 5 to 10 minute intro of Sandman making his way to the ring through the crowd.
Oh, hacky.
One of the things of note is just once the crowd, you know, kind of zeroes in and figures out, like, okay, he's coming from right here, right behind me. Like the amount of people that just push over, and like the guardrail doesn't hardly come up past a person's knees. And these people are like leaning over the guardrail to get as close as they can. One guy even takes the cane and is like, you know, like that. And like Sandman doesn't even hardly sell it. It's just great. I would love to know how many we were taking bets on how many beers he had shoved in his pants. I mean, and for a shoot, he was like out of it. he was drunk before he got to the ring, and more on that later. But yeah, it was a great entrance. Obviously, if you're watching this on the WWE Network, you don't get to see it. Is it on the DVD?
No, they didn't buck up for it.
Yeah.
No.
So John and I talked.
Find it on a torrent or something. But if you can get that original entrance, that's what you want. Where the WWE Network and the DVD has like a dubbed over version that's like close to Enter Sandman, I guess, but not Enter Sandman.
Right. No. So John and I kind of talked about this before we hit record today. Was that WWE licensed a one-time use only of Enter Sandman, and which I thought was great. It's something they didn't have to do. It's something I'm sure was not cheap.
They had to do it.
100%. Again, this is what people are coming to see. And WWE being WWE, they have to put smiles on faces. So it was cool that they got to do that.
And I'm sure that's something Dreamer was. This has to happen. Like, if he doesn't come out to Enter Sandman, the crowd is not going to have any of it. Yeah, but I mean, it's awesome. He comes out through the crowd, drinking his beers. But yeah, he's Sandman. It's what he does.
Yeah, for sure. So then we get another entrance before the match even starts.
Yeah, we get all four guys in the ring. You think the match is about to start, and Meanie, Hollywood Nova, and Big Stevie Cool make their way out, and the Blue World Order shows up. And they start cutting their promo, and Stevie hits a super kick. I want to say it was on Sandman, and they're off and running from there. Kid Cash does a run-in, and then out come Balls Mahoney and Axel Rotten swinging the chairs. And this is all before the match starts. So we've got chaos breaking out. Everybody kind of rumbles to the outside. Kid Cash was dumped out early. He does a big dive spot, and he uses the referee to get his jump and take everybody
and that's
out.
That's the only flash of Kid Cash you see. Who, by the way, was on the Hardcore Homecoming 2 nights prior.
Yeah.
But all this before the match starts.
Yeah.
Just insane.
And then after Cash hits that big dive, Balls, Axel, they all kind of brawl to the back. The Dudleys, Sandman, and Dreamer, they get in the ring, and the match starts from there.
Yeah. This is another one. There was so much happening, like nonstop. My notes are like hardly there.
The cheese grater stood out to me right away.
So we got our classic ladder usage, and I think it was Tommy that puts it around his head and does the airplane spin.
Little Three Stooges.
But you said it. Holy cow! I'll let you take this one here.
The cheese grater, yeah.
I couldn't even. Nowhere on the internet can I even find a picture of Tommy getting the cheese grater to the face. But as we're watching this back, when the cheese grater comes out, immediately I know what's happening. I'm like, oh god! And Anthony's like, a cheese grater? I'm like, oh, just wait. And so the funny thing is if you watch this back, Tommy blades right before the grater. And so he's like, he turns around to the camera and then they get the thing and it's already going. And then he takes the Bubba Ray takes the grater and just goes to town and legit hard way opens him up with a grater. And I'm like, ugh. But it is a disgusting visual. But oh my God, is it opening them up?
Yeah,
Holy
Tommy
cow.
is bleeding a ton. Bubba puts his hand on Tommy's face, wipes the blood off, and puts it on his face. It's like, oh,
yeah,
gross.
That is not COVID friendly.
No.
But yeah, speaking of, everybody I think in this match ends up with some color of some sort at some point.
Yeah. They're hitting each other with pans. They're going nuts.
Yeah.
Both Dudleys are bloodied up. The Impact players show up with a ball of barbed wire.
Yeah, it was like a little globe thing. And I was like,
yeah,
I don't even know what are we doing? But before they even showed up, as they're getting ladders and cheese graters and tables and they keep showing shots up at the Crusaders, and of course they're hamming it up like, oh, look at that, another table. It's great stuff. It's so good. Let's see here what we've got next.
Impact players come out, and that draws out Lance, Justin, Jason again, but also
I do have that one out. There we go.
But then Francine comes out, just gives Tommy a good kick and drops him. Franny's awesome. She was first time appearing in WWE, I believe, for her. But then Miss Beulah McGillicuddy comes out to make the save for Tommy. And take
gives
on
Joey Styles the chance to get the call that everybody's been waiting for.
Oh, the cat fight! Yes, yeah. But yeah, Beulah comes in, attacks Francine, fights her off, and then you had the next picture ready to go of Beulah and Tommy, of course, real life husband and wife. So they take on the Dudleys, hit them. Did they hit him with that DDT? Yeah,
they did.
Yeah. And then Joey gets the.
Well, he does. She does not. Bubba drops too soon, and it was so distracting to watch.
Yes.
Because she goes for it and is late, but then is smiling and laughing the whole time as they both go for the double cover, and I'm like, what are you doing?
When's the big kiss? Is it before the DDT or after?
After.
After, so then
no, I'm sorry, before, because as they're doing it, she's got blood all in her hair and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't. So So he's all bloodied up, and they, are across the ring and look at each other and come together. And all I'm thinking at that time is, please, dear God, please do not make out, because I will hurl. And thankfully, it's just a hug, but that's all it takes. And like half of our hair is just soaked in his blood, just from a quick little. I'm like, ugh, nasty. So let's see here. Yeah, so then we get another surprise entrance.
Oh, the boss recently turned heel. The runt of the litter, Spike Dudley, comes on out and starts directing traffic. He gets the table in the ring, and well, it's ECW.
What's that in his pocket?
And it's the main event. We know it's got to be coming.
Oh yeah.
And lighter fluid and fire, and Tommy takes it. Yeah.
He takes it all right. Here, I've got a GIF here. This cell too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Poor guy.
Yeah, that was exactly what the show needed to end on. Although it did not end on that. So another, not only was the cheese grater shot an elusive shot to find on the internet, but trying to find anything with Stone Cold, there's like two pictures, and that's it. So this is not from that event, but
so after the power bomb through the flaming table, the Dudleys, they go after Beulah and they try to get her. Sandman comes in, Kane, and then Sandman, being Sandman, like you said, he ran out of beer on the entrance, so he starts screaming, "I need a beer! I need a beer!
I need a beer!"
Yeah,
like belligerently, like nonstop. And then we get glass breaking, and we get Stone Cold comes down to the ring, and he talks a lot of trash, as only Stone Cold can, to all of the WWE Crusaders. And of course, it's obviously Stone Cold's in-ring career is done at this point. But he's repping the ECW brand as he did in the Invasion, and as he was ECW alumni.
Yeah.
So he's like calling him down.
Gets the locker room to empty out first, so you get all of the ECW guys in the ring with Steve.
Right. Excuse me. Yeah. Let's have a beer bash, is what he's saying. Yeah.
And then Steve tries to get the Raw and SmackDown guys to come on down.
Correct. So then they get in the ring, and it's like the Red Sea. It's kind of like ECW guys on this half, a little bit of space, and the WWE guys. And then we get another music cue. The return of Taz.
And that's another one where the crowd knew they were chanting his name before he even came out, and everybody, it worked out perfect because Taz debuted. We had talked about it previously in our top 10 debut episode, where Taz and Angle have history, and you mentioned it. They had their little confrontation on SmackDown. Taz mission. The Kata Hajime, I think that's how you pronounce it, hits that sleeper, the Taz mission, chokes out Angle in the rampway, while everyone else, the Raw and the SmackDown guys, boom.
Not only that, but it was amazing. It was like, where did Taz come from? It was like Angle like kind of backtracks or whatever, and like just right into the move, and I'm like, smooth as silk, man. It was so good. Let's see here what I've got next. So,
all the craziness from that brawl. Yeah, that's a great shot. Seeing everybody about to go.
Yep. So obviously the big topic of debate here is, let me see if I can get my mouse somewhere over here. Okay,
as I put him over earlier, is a great heel.
Right. So here's Taz, by the way, coming into the ring as all this is happening. But JBL makes his way. Everybody enters the ring right where Taz is. And JBL kind of fishes his way and makes his way up to the top of the ring to get in sight with Blue Meanie. And we will touch on this here in just a second. But then all of a sudden, it all breaks loose, and there's a brawl on our hands, ECW versus WWE. And it's kind of typical, like, few people are getting their moves in. I think there's a gore. There's a few different things here and there, and then the ring kind of clears out and whatnot. but yeah, the real elephant in the room for this pay-per-view is what happens between Meanie and JBL. So John, do you want to give us kind of catch us up on what caused this and why this even happened?
Well, what I remember is Meanie's got. Did he have staples in his head from Hardcore Homecoming?
Yes.
So he had some staples, and they had beef from, was it Twitter? Was Twitter a thing in 2005?
I don't believe it's Twitter. I think he had a blog, is what I believe it was.
Yeah. So they had beef previously, and JBL, kind of took exception to some of the things Meanie had said.
Well, Meanie had called him a bully on his blog, is what happened. Yeah.
And JBL went straight for him in that fight and started laying into him.
Even gives him the old hockey move where he takes the shirt and puts it over so he can kind of get on top of his head.
Yeah. But I mean, you go back and you watch, and like it's a big brawl. People are da da da. You don't have to kill each other. JBL is in there swinging for the fences and bust open those staples, and you can see it on that picture of Meanie all bloodied up. So that's my recollection of what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And earlier we spoke of Maven being one of the Crusaders. Blue Meanie even gets Maven, who happens to be right around him, and calls a spot and says, "Get on my back" or something. Meaning, kind of do this number, aka get over here so JBL can't get to me, kind of thing. So he's trying to maneuver and stuff. And then watching this back, like as it happened, I was totally the same. I'm like, oh, okay, a big brawl and whatever. And then all of a sudden at the end, it's like, well, what happened to him?
Yeah.
But then in watching it, it's like you could see after this has happened, like within seconds, ECW guys are looking up and kind of figuring out, and Meanie's kind of putting the word out. And JBL, like, he gets out of the ring, and it's like, it's really on. Like the ECW boys are really upset and just, he's taking liberties that are, first of all, shouldn't have been taken over something so silly, and especially for somebody so tenured and so professional.
This was a fun night, and a bunch of guys working on a one-night contract, and yeah, it's not the way to end the show.
No, not at all. And apparently after it goes off the air and they go backstage, ironically, John Laurinaitis is backstage and goes up to Meanie, and the first thing he says to Meanie is, "What's up with that? We didn't give you clearance to blade." And Meanie's like, "What are you talking about?" And so he has to explain the staples and all this. And as this is happening, JBL walks in, and JBL says something to the effect of, "You want to finish it right here?" And Meanie's like, "There's nothing to. What are you talking about?" And then apparently ECW guys get in the way, and Meanie's whisked off. But yeah, there was almost a second bout backstage. But even the officials backstage didn't even catch it. I mean, they thought he would just bladed and was trying to get over or something. I'm like, no. That was awful.
But yeah, that's the backstage stuff. The way they end the show, though, they have the big brawl. Angle gets choked out by Taz, but Bischoff he wasn't in the ring. He's not a wrestler. But Foley on commentary. You got something else?
I do. So before we move past the Meanie thing, I wanna give the payoff. Do you remember the retribution for this?
Was it Wrestler's Court?
No, which it would have been a conflict of interest because he was JBL was usually the prosecutor for Wrestler's Court.
Yeah.
So this took place June 12th. On July 7th, on an episode of SmackDown, we get a rematch because they both say that they are going to be professional and whatever. We get a rematch between JBL and Blue Meanie.
Oh, no.
BWO is at ringside. And so in real life, Blue Meanie is talking about possibly bringing up a lawsuit and pressing charges against JBL for assault. And long story short, there's political things that have to be taken into account for, wrestling and that kind of stuff. You can't tick off the wrong people, kind of thing. So long story short, Steven Richards says, don't worry about it, I got you. And so they agree to do this rematch, if you will, between Blue Meanie and JBL with BWO at ringside. And man, I'm over here. I'm watching it right now. Stevie Richards gets involved. JBL brings a chair into the ring and leaves it on the ground. Goes for Meanie. Richards picks up the chair and gives him like the biggest receipt. If you watch this, he actually pulls the chair so that he hits him right on the top of the head with the lip of the chair, not the beefy part in the middle. And I mean, it opens JBL up like 10 times worse than what Meanie was opened up.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all, but I wasn't watching SmackDown at the time.
Oh, check it out. It is worth a watch. And then Meanie gets a win over JBL due to this chair shot. Counts him 1, 2, 3 right in the middle of the ring and goes over JBL. So that was kind of their way of giving back. And since all this has happened, a lot of time heals a lot of things. And of course, JBL and Blue Meanie have made up and have let bygones be bygones. So that was kind of a cool bow to that little story. I didn't want to leave it on, just the hatred and all that.
Yeah.
But one thing that we discussed in watching this back at my house was JBL's track record for this. It all started over him being called a bully, and it stopped with Blue Meanie and JBL whenever Blue Meanie stood up to him. But then there's kind of this reoccurring thing with everybody that everybody has to kind of go through this hazing, if you will, through JBL. Mm-hmm. So I won't say that JBL learned his lesson, but he did learn not to mess with Meanie anymore after that. So
yeah.
Back to One Night Stand. Here we go.
Oh, Sandman again.
So this is like one of 2 pictures of Steve from this night, and I'm glad that this is one of the pictures because literally Steve's over here cutting a promo. I mean, really and truly, Steve is feeling this crowd and just having a great time, and it's just exactly what the picture looks like. Give me a beer, and Steve's like pushing him by the neck, and just like get back, give me some space. Here's your damn beer. It's great stuff, man.
Oh, Sandman.
Yeah. And I think the deal was Steve was looking for probably that one moment. I don't know why I can't. There we go. I'm sure Steve was looking for that one moment that he probably felt that the fans wanted, and that was him and Sandman in the ring, clack your beers together, drink a beer, and that's your 2 beer drinking, big entrance kind of guys. Oh, yeah. That would have been the perfect way to go off the air. But Sandman was like wasted. Sandman at one point is even on the stairs on the outside of the ring with his cane up in this hand and drinking his beer, and Steve's got him, like by the back of the shirt so he doesn't fall forward.
Well,
and it's just like, oh my gosh,
Sandman.
Yeah, and like you said, Steve says, you don't need a can of beer, you need a case of beer.
Yeah,
it's just good stuff. So,
but yeah, with Bischoff, I started to talk about it. Bischoff tries to leave. Foley on commentary brings him back to the ring, throws him in. And did he get stunned? Is that what happened?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little stunner to end it. So, nice ending for the One Night Stand 2005, which they thought was going to be a one-off and led to another ECW One Night Stand and the resurrection of ECW. And then they eventually dropped the ECW, and its One Night Stand is a long-running pay-per-view for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think up to, I want to say 2008, I believe, somewhere around there. Yeah. Possibly 9, but 8 or 9, somewhere in there. Yeah, it was. It had its ups and downs. It had, just like we said at the top of the show, like there was a lot of backstage, stuff that if you don't know, there was a lot of meat on the bone on this one for sure. There were some matches that, I think of the Chris Benoit and the Eddie match, and I'm like, I wish it could have offered more. But not every match in a pay-per-view with this kind of a lineup can be bangers, There were some really standout performances in this pay-per-view.
And they didn't. You can't bring back everybody. You can't feature everybody properly. and they were trying to do it with WWE guys and ECW guys. So I mean, there's a lot going on to this show. I really enjoy it. I thought it was a lot of fun, top to bottom for the most part. Eddie Benoit, I mean, it wasn't the technical masterpiece they thought it could have been. Jericho Lance was fun, but I kind of wanted more from them. But
same, yeah,
that's me.
Same. I feel like Jericho and Lance had a great match. The things that they were doing were fantastic. I just wish they had another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. But overall thoughts. Would you give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
Oh, thumbs up. Yeah. I mean, we're still talking about it 15 years later.
Same. For sure. Yeah, for sure. So stick around for the next episode. And John, thanks again for being here.
Yeah,
and
always a
we will
blast.
see you on the next go round.